The marriage was falling apart at the seams. Dorothea paced around the apartment, consumed by a sense of dismay. She and her spouse had futilely delved deeper into their careers, dedicating less time and attention to each other. Any emotional or physical intimacy between them had vanished, replaced only by coldness. Coldness and silent evenings in front of the droning television. Their attempts to have heart-to-heart conversations ended in harsh words and hurt feelings. Instead of seeking compromises and solving problems together, they began to avoid any conversations, fearing to end up on the accused bench. The situation was spiraling out of control. Dorothea found herself snapping at Vidal more frequently. She could no longer look at him calmly in the eyes, and Vidal himself couldn't understand why he ended up with such a resentful wife. They didn't even discuss their achievements anymore. In several months, neither of them shared any work-related news. In general, they stopped sharing news with each other altogether. It was absurd, considering that their entire relationship was built on endless attempts to outdo each other. Now the woman felt utterly drained and lost. The endless struggle for success deprived her of the opportunity to make real friends who wouldn't be interested only in Dora's social status. There was no one she could confide in, no one to ask for advice. Here, in such a life situation, Teo was utterly helpless. Not even her mother would help here. She would only remind her of the prestige Vidal brought alongside a successful businesswoman. Oh God, what should I do? From an early age, they desperately tried to outdo each other. In school, they waged a whole war for grades, influencing teachers, and winning school events. What was happening in society might not have concerned them at all, but their relationship always had to be tense because of the desire to outshine each other. They felt humiliated and disappointed if someone else received praise or recognition they considered theirs. Sonora Pero, I've completed the 5th and 6th tasks as well. The girl rushed to the teacher's desk and placed her notebook in front of the woman. She awkwardly smiled, anticipating the scene that would soon unfold. Almost every day, these two would have a scandal right in the classroom. Teachers didn't know how to deal with them anymore, and parents remained indifferent to the issue. Sonora Pero could only try to smooth things over. Dorothea, but I assigned you tasks 1 through 4 to be done at home. Sonora Pero stroked the student's head. You don't need to rush ahead of the curriculum. Ha! Suddenly, laughter erupted from the second desk. Only the 5th and 6th? I've completed 9 tasks. The teacher sighed heavily and rested her forehead on her hand. The girl frowned, slowly turning towards her classmate. At least I didn't go to a tutor. Everyone knows your parents throw thousands just to cram something into your head. Tia sniffed and turned away from Vidal, but apparently nobody ever taught you tact. The classroom was filled with stifled laughter. It was always amusing for the kids to watch these snobs. Every day during homework check, the children watched the high achievers with bated breath. Nobody wanted to miss out on this free show. Vidal, however, crossed his arms over his chest and shamefully fell silent. This time, he had nothing to say to the smug girl. Their rivalry had grown from school days into a serious competition for success at science fairs and admission to prestigious educational institutions. Each event became a battleground where they sought not only to win but to destroy their competitor. Science fairs were for many a simple opportunity to showcase their knowledge and talents, but for them, it was a real arena where they clashed head-on. They undermined each other, seeking to discredit their competitor and claim first place at any cost. Once, Vidal stocked up on small gifts for his project. They were small, brightly colored ceramic figurines, perfect for his project on ancient art. Of course, nobody was interested in Tea's project about the extinction process of mammoths anymore. She had wasted her time on homemade mammoth figurines and a visual demonstration of soil formation around fossils. She remembered this low blow from her opponent for a long time. For the next time, she simply baked a whole tray of homemade brownies. This tug-of-war constantly accompanied the two top students. But when it came to securing a government-funded spot in the capital's most prestigious economics university, the joke stopped. Government-funded spots were limited. Only the best of the best could get in. A real war began, where each of them was ready to sacrifice reputation and principles just to assert themselves at the expense of defeating their opponent. Well, Vidal, are you going to buy yourself a ticket to the future this time too? I still remember that science fair where you handed out gifts to the judges. I wouldn't be surprised if you opt for a paid spot this time as well. You'd better keep quiet, huh? Just admit that you're afraid to lose. The boy approached his classmate, looking down at her, and you have every reason to be afraid. You don't measure up to my level, little girl. The girl burst into loud laughter, instantly drawing the attention of those around her. She put her hands on her hips and lifted her chin. Her expression was full of contempt for her main opponent. While you were running to tutors, I managed all my studies with my own mind. That's the problem. You don't have quite enough mind naturally. The spot in the faculty is mine, you can't even dream of it. Dorothea, possessing a sharp and fiery temper since childhood, didn't hesitate to act this time either. Their conflicts with Vidal at school often escalated to the point where the couple would end up fighting. It was left to anyone capable to break them up. The girl unscrewed the cap of her water bottle and generously doused her adversary with water. The boy stood frozen in place. Calm down, hotshot. Admission to university meant too much for both of them. Nerves were on edge. Each wanted to completely unsettle their opponent so they wouldn't have the strength to influence the results. If they both passed their exams with top scores, they would face additional testing from the university itself. So, even after the exams, the battle was far from over. The whole process was accompanied by scandals and conflicts. Every meeting ended in a new confrontation. They utilized all their connections and available resources to achieve their goals, even if it meant disregarding ethical norms. This fierce struggle for recognition and success became the foundation of their interaction, shaping their personalities and defining their relationships. And now, sitting in the admissions office at the request of the rector, they awaited the verdict. It was being decided who among them would be the loser and who would emerge as the rightful winner. What? Both exclaimed, standing before the admissions committee. You both excelled in your exams. Moreover, your additional assignments were also worthy of the highest praise. That's why it was decided to add another budgetary spot, specifically for your case. No, this can't be happening, Vidal muttered indignantly. Yes, this is unfair. One of us had to be worse. Review the results, this is simply ridiculous. Sharp on his words, Vidal refrained from interjecting when Taya agreed with him. He sincerely agreed with her at that moment, so jokes were unnecessary. Both of you are exceptionally good, young people. We couldn't afford to turn away one of such talented potential students. The man adjusted his glasses, so, if I were in your place, I would be happy about the admission. The couple left the office. Both of them kept silent, although their thoughts converged on the same thing. This is all utter nonsense. This simply should never have happened. But they were explained the decision of the university leadership, all the facts were laid out. They both got accepted. The greatest battle of their youth ended in a draw. However, ahead of them were the days of student life. And they both mentally prepared for a new confrontation. And their conflicts began from the very first week of studies. The guys couldn't decide who would be the class monitor. Every day they brought more and more arguments to their side. The new group had already grown tired of their classmates. When the tutor asked who would be the monitor, everyone present immediately sighed discontentedly, full of fatigue and irritation. The guys even had to turn to Alejandro, a former classmate of the feuding couple, who enrolled in the university on a paid basis, to ask whom they should support to end this nightmare. As you wish, but I would choose someone else, the guy grimaced and shrugged. As for me, these two are complete psychos. Don't give them extra reason to fight. So they did. They chose the most proactive student, excluding Dorothea and Vidal from the candidates. Surprisingly, it worked. The couple, of course, grumbled for a long time about the sudden replacement of the brightest students in the stream, but they calmed down. And so, Even in the smallest details of student life, they constantly provoked each other into conflict, as if they hadn't finished school, as if the situation hadn't changed at all. But their relationship suddenly reached a new level when in their second year they bumped into each other face to face on the street near the club. Young, heated, and agitated, they began a dirty and cruel quarrel, full of unflattering insults and accusations. The tension between them was escalating, but suddenly, in this moment of irritation, something unexpected happened. "Yeah, clearly, scholarships are not enough for you," Vidal remarked sharply at the sight of his classmate. "You've been wearing that sweater since high school. There's such a thing as a favorite item. Although, what would you know about love and such feelings? You live in your little world where everyone should adore you, and you don't even bother with a response." The girl nervously lit her cigarette and turned away from the guy, her free hand stroking the buttons on her blue, deeply adored cardigan. She didn't want to ruin her evening. She didn't want another fight with that obnoxious upstart. But Vidal didn't want to back down. On the contrary, he moved closer to her and continued his meaningless tirades. "You're standing here, all dressed up like a circus performer. You're having fun, having a good time." His voice was ingratiating and playfully luscious. "With a hangover, probably will not be very easy to write a research paper, and you have to hand it in 2 days. "What kind of paper?" Dorothea suddenly perked up. "We weren't told about any paper, were we?" "Correction, you weren't told." Vidal paid the headman a small sum for his silence. The out-of-town student was already struggling from scholarship to scholarship, so he couldn't pass up a morally repulsive offer. One of the honors students really wanted to be the only one, so he was doing everything he could to get Thea off the scholarship. Ideally, she'd be expelled. "What did you do?" The girl threw the smoldering cigarette in his direction and flew right up to him. "This is getting out of hand. Vidal, just admit that you can't get rid of me." "I didn't do anything like that to you. I didn't interfere with your studies." "Your mistake, not mine, dearie." Vidal smirked contemptuously and poked his rival in the forehead with his finger. "Your place is empty compared to mine. Go on sabbatical, preferably just disappear from the university. Sucking up to the professors, being a good princess to our classmates. I've been sick of you since high school. I won't let you study where I do. I'm tired of putting up with you. You're a psycho. You want to play big? I'll show you the big game." Dora switched to a threatening hiss. "I wonder if the rector knows you slept with Senora Fuentes. I even have pictures from your date. You were so romantic that day with our young teacher. You stooped too low to fail me in the session. I'm going to print those photos out, put them in the prettiest frames, and show them to the entire administration." "What? That doesn't sound as fun as your setup." The guy was visibly nervous, but he tried to hide it. Having an affair with a teacher was a pretty serious crime in such an elite institution. Vidal suddenly realized that the simple Thea could also turn up the heat. Their clash continued for a good half hour. Threats, denunciations, and simple personal insults poured out of both of them. They were taking out on each other all the stress that had fallen on them due to the heavy academic process, parental demands, student activities, and volunteer work. At some point, the point of their quarrel was completely lost, and they just poured filth on each other, having long ago lost the thread of the conversation. Under the influence of the cocktail of alcohol, emotions, and passion that was bubbling inside them, they suddenly felt a strong attraction to each other. This vague impulse, which they couldn't explain, turned into a passionate kiss that captured them both. Their relationship began on the day they clashed in a fiery argument right outside the club, when passion ignited and led to an unexpected kiss. But the morning after that sudden moment, waking up in the same bed and piecing together memories of the previous evening bit by bit, they both found themselves bewildered, unsure of how to label or explain what had happened. The young couple simply lacked the words to describe their experience. "How?" Vidal managed to squeeze out. "Like this," Dorothea replied not too eloquently, pulling the blanket higher and staring into the emptiness before her. "Did you enjoy it?" Suddenly, in a velvety voice, the guy who usually showed no interest in Dora's feelings or affairs decided to ask, "I mean, you know." Was the evening not wasted after all? Well, Senor Fuentes seems to be pleased. Dorothea adjusted her hair, still not looking at her unplanned partner. I hardly remember anything at all. Must have been quite drunk. The guy got up from the bed, no longer ashamed of his nudity. He calmly gathered his clothes scattered around the room while the girl continued to sit on the bed lost in thought. At some point, she finally decided to observe the young man. He was perfectly built, handsome, and just as intelligent as she was. A rather decent candidate to be beside her. Suddenly, Vidal straightened up and held up 2 empty bottles of strong alcohol. Aha! So, here's your amnesia, he grinned widely, and at that moment Dora noticed his perfect bite. We just continued the party at home. No wonder the evening played out like a slideshow even in my head. Yeah, I guess we just went overboard. And here we are. The guy looked at the disheveled mop of his rival's hair, the pillow marks on her face, and couldn't help but smile. Of all the girls around, only Thea was so fanatical about self-care that even now, after a wildly fun night, she looked simply stunning and even cute. He definitely enjoyed looking at her when she wasn't threatening him with retribution. You know, Dora, the guy sat on the edge of the bed, as close to his rival as possible. You're actually quite attractive. I mean, attractive when you're not trying to throttle me, you know what I mean? Better keep quiet, that sounds just awful. The girl smirked and tossed a pillow at Vidal. Despite the uncertainty and confusion, they couldn't deny the attraction they unexpectedly felt for each other. It was something more than just a random kiss. They felt there was a special connection between them, even if they couldn't explain its nature. Thus began a strange alliance based on rivalry and competition. Their relationship was filled with constant battles for spheres of influence and recognition. They continued to compete with each other in everything, even in their personal relationships. They constantly tried to outdo each other in everything, from gifts to simple gestures of affection. Their life together was polished to an unnatural perfection. Impeccable cleanliness in the house, the most harmonious interior. Being in their abode caused a peculiar effect of the valley of the uncanny among many acquaintances. But the couple, in turn, perceived the discomfort of others as blatant envy. Among all the people around them, they considered each other the only competitive partners. Each regarded the other as equal in intellect, ambition, and passion for success. This unique dynamic of competition and overcoming set the rhythm of their relationship, making their alliance unique and utterly unusual. However, big business and recognition of important achievements won't give a sense of family to a person. Oh God, we've been married for so many years. Vidal lamented. Montero's wife will soon give birth to their 3rd child. Domingo's wife gave birth to their 2nd a month ago. And you? When will I have a child with you? When I want to, that's when I'll have one. Dorothea exclaimed, it's my body, my womb. I decide about them, not you. I don't need years of maternity leave. I don't want to experience sleepless nights by the baby's crib. I don't want to constantly stay with the child when he's sick while you work, grow, and live a full life. The man left, slamming the door behind him. He was extremely displeased with the situation, as was his wife. Well, then, go away. Damn provider, as if you're the only one working here, Dora yelled at the closed door out of frustration. Go to Montero's wife, let her give you the 4th. For the woman, her career and achievements were the highest priority. She refused to have a child because she believed that maternity leave would mean missed opportunities for her professional growth. She was convinced that motherhood would hinder her career, impede her personal development. Besides, it is well known that pregnancy often irreversibly ruins the figure, so much so that no sports can help anymore. Dorothea wasn't ready for that yet. Meanwhile, the man, on the other hand, felt the immense pressure of societal stereotypes and expectations associated with fatherhood. He was distressed seeing that his business partners were already becoming fathers for the 2nd, or even the 3rd time, and feared falling behind them. He felt that the absence of children made him less successful in the eyes of others and could negatively affect his career and social status. Vidal feared losing his reputation and becoming the subject of ridicule. The first significant conflicts began with the topic of motherhood. The spouses found themselves at an impasse, unable to resolve this complex issue peacefully. Both of them were stubborn, steadfast in their beliefs, so quarrels began to erupt almost daily. While their aspirations for money, power, and fame were aligned, this couple had another significant similarity that defined their character and relationship: a troubled childhood. Both of their early years were filled with difficulties, hardships, and constant struggles for recognition and success. Both Dorothea and Vidal grew up in families where it was important to show oneself better than others, to be better than those around them. Their parents instilled in them a thirst for victory, a desire for the best, and never stopping at anything that could stand in the way of their success. These family issues left a deep mark on each of their personalities. They both became ambitious, persistent, and ready to face difficulties. They do not accept defeat and always strive for victory, whether in the professional sphere or in personal relationships. Such a similar childhood was another factor that ultimately led them to married life. Despite all the quarrels, they understood each other better than anyone else because they had gone through similar trials and struggles for a better life. The man's parents were cold, pragmatic, and devoid of warmth, which affected his childhood and upbringing. They employed sophisticated methods of punishment for failures, creating a minefield of can'ts and cans for him. Instead of support and understanding, he encountered criticism and severity. Even significant achievements were accompanied by scant praise. But the slightest mistake left a mark from the ruler's strike on his hands. That's why Vidal's palms were calloused and rough. They were simply mutilated by harsh blows. "Dad, you know about Dora," Vidal murmured, barely holding back tears of horror, huddling in the corner of the room. "We're constantly fighting for the first place. She's not stupid, she's not like other kids at all. Dad, please, don't do this, it's just second place, this contest doesn't even affect anything." The girl outsmarted him again. She was the craftiest of her kind, always finding loopholes to keep up with the sons of the elite. He couldn't even bring himself to ask her for mercy. The boy lacked the courage to negotiate with her, and pride prevented him from acknowledging her as his equal. After all, his father believed he should be the best of the best, so he was obliged to meet those expectations. But now, he found himself backed into a corner once more, hiding his hands behind his back. The wounds from the previous beating had only just healed. Receiving blows on barely healed bruises was always more unbearable. But the man didn't back down, while the mother merely looked at her son with displeasure. There was not a trace of remorse in her eyes. If it were up to her, she would snatch the ruler from her husband's hands and discipline the boy herself for losing. "For the winner, there's only one place first," barked the father, brandishing the wooden ruler. "And you gave it to that riffraff. You're the son of respectable people, academics, businessmen. A disgrace to our family. What do I need with your Dora? No pedigree, no appearance, parents are drunkards and riffraff. And you dare say that a child of such nobodies can compare to you? Hands. Quickly, extend your hands." The boy whimpered bitterly and extended his open palms in front of himself. He turned away and tightly shut his eyes to avoid meeting his father's crazed gaze. As a result of such upbringing, he didn't grow up to be the ideal child his parents had hoped for. Vidal was filled with fears and complexes. He feared ending up with nothing, feared showing weakness, losing, hitting rock bottom in life. Just the thought of not fulfilling himself in the present and the future made him anxious. These fears haunted him throughout his life, influencing his decisions and actions. He constantly felt the pressure and expectation of success imposed on him since childhood, only intensifying his anxious thoughts and doubts about his own abilities. The horror of falling to the very bottom became one of the main motivators of his actions, driving him to strive for success at any cost. This internal conflict between fear and ambition defined his behavior and relationships with others. But Dorothea's family wasn't exactly loving and understanding either. Her parents were unambitious and spineless, resulting in them always being left with empty pockets in any situation. This impoverished childhood left an unpleasant mark on her psyche, filled with memories of helplessness and despair in the face of life's difficulties. She regarded her parents with disgust, disappointment, and dissatisfaction. Not only could they not provide for their child, but they also tried to fulfill themselves at her expense, disregarding her needs and desires. Her complaints of fatigue were simply brushed aside. They made her toil for their future, all while remaining stagnant in the same dead-end cycle of debt and the living room couch. T, darling, come here. The girl reluctantly but quickly ran into the kitchen. Her mother stood by the old table in the same worn-out robe as always. It was as if there were no other options, and in reality, there weren't. The woman simply couldn't afford a new one. All the money was squandered by her husband, while she herself poured finances into a marketing pyramid scheme, which sang sweet promises of enrichment but in reality just drained the last pennies from foolish housewives. Yes, Mom? Step on the scales, it's time to weigh yourself, she nudged the device toward her daughter. You know we have to do this every month so you grow up splendid. Dorothea shrugged off her warm sweater to make the weighing more accurate and stepped onto the scale. The display showed she had gained 4 kilograms. Sometimes the girl couldn't understand how. Where does the weight come from if her mother is so harshly enforcing diets on her? Perhaps Taya's side jobs are to blame, from which she buys those appetizing, cute, fluffy buns in the school cafeteria that are impossible to resist. Her mother clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Oh well, we spoil you. Mom, how about we go to the doctor instead? I'm 13 years old. Kids at this age are growing. Dora didn't want her mother to exclude meat cutlets from her diet again. Listen, let's measure my height. Maybe I just grew taller? Nope. I would have noticed. Plus, your pants would have become shorter. The woman plopped heavily onto the stool, her sides rippling like water disturbed by the action. Not only are you getting chubby, but your grades are also a disaster. What's with this bee, Taya? No dinner for you today. You'll stay home for a week. Maybe then you'll start losing weight and spend some time with your textbooks. Dora knew her pants wouldn't become shorter for another couple of years. Her mother bought them with room to grow, folded them inside, and then unfolded them a couple of centimeters when they became too short. No one argued. It was just futile air shaking. And that stupid Vidal, who spilled correction fluid on her test. She lost points for sloppiness because of him. The girl nodded obediently and went to her room. Eating wasn't meant for her today. This experience made the woman strong and independent. She learned to overcome difficulties and fight for herself. Despite all the obstacles, she maintained her determination and perseverance, striving for a better life and self-realization, even if it meant doing it alone. Taya desperately wanted to avoid the fate of her parents. She wanted to be as different as possible from her mother, who only knew how to berate her daughter for every extra kilogram. Yet, in Dora's memory, this lady remained as a shapeless figure in a dirty robe, with messy hair and a cigarette between her teeth. Dorothea didn't want to resemble her father either, an alcoholic, a lazy man with only 9 years of education. He never forgot to reproach his daughter for extra spending on her textbooks or sports equipment. He considered himself a breadwinner, although the family's main income came from his elderly mother's disability pension, who was in such deep dementia that she didn't even recognize herself. And now, Vidal and Dorothea together, in this small family where 2 adult children lived, relationships with their parents remained a source of stress and anxiety for them. Every call from their parents triggered a severe panic attack, reminding them that the past was far from behind. Vidal, I haven't heard a word about you from my colleagues for a long time. Have you completely relaxed? The elderly man growled angrily into the phone. You've built your modest fortune, and you think you can live quietly in your cheap shack with your simple-minded wife? Reputation. I taught you to guard your reputation like the apple of your eye. Dora, it's been a month since we received any money from you. Is this how you thank us for raising you for 18 years? The woman squealed indignantly. We scraped the last crust of bread, scraped money wherever we could. You know, you could at least worry about your granny. We're such bad parents to you, always scolding you. But Grandma is so good, you never heard a single word of complaint from her. So pity your loved ones, if you have a heart, you wretch. For a man brought up in an atmosphere of strictness and demands, calls from parents could evoke feelings of guilt and dissatisfaction with himself, especially if he hadn't achieved the expected success. At the same time, for a woman whose parents were spineless and helpless, these calls could provoke feelings of annoyance and irritation from unpleasant memories of the past. They had long been living separately from their parents. They deliberately moved to a residential area on the other side of the city. Yes, it was inconvenient to commute to work, but it also made it harder for their parents to visit them. How their families hated each other. Vidal and Dorothy had nowhere to hide if their old folks started bickering at each other when they accidentally met. While the couple was wintering in warm Thailand, the woman began to notice strange changes in her husband's behavior. Knowing his character and habits inside out, she could detect every deviation from the established norm. The first thing she noticed was his new haircut. It was something completely new, unusual for a man who had chosen his perfect haircut for life since high school. This minor change in appearance evoked mixed feelings in the woman. On one hand, it's never too late to try something new, but on the other hand, her husband had never been a supporter of hair experiments. "Darling, what's with the miracle?" the woman sarcastically asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Some special occasion?" "No, I just decided," Vidal smoothed his new hairstyle with his hand. "I just decided it was time for a change. After all, I haven't done this since high school, remember?" "I remember." Dora skeptically regarded her husband's response. Maybe he was indeed tired of the old haircut. Or maybe he just decided to conceal something. Taya's mother might have been an utter failure, but sometimes even a peacock produces beautiful sounds. She always told her daughter that a man will only change at the first request of the woman he wants to love. And Taya, with a touch of paranoia, noted that besides the stupid haircut, what irritated her most about Vidal were his uneven eyebrows, which he adamantly refused to pluck. The last time they argued about this was 5 years ago, and since then Dora had resigned herself to the man's quirks. And, oh miracle, along with the new haircut, her husband suddenly came home with new eyebrows. After the woman noticed the first changes in her husband, she began to pay attention to other strange changes in his behavior. At first, she felt a faint unfamiliar scent emanating from his clothes, which caused her concern and suspicion. Dorothy herself loved fresh scents, with minty or citrusy notes. Vidal, on the other hand, liked the smell of wood and tobacco. But this Amber, it was unbearably cloying, screaming of strawberries and vanilla. Then she noticed that he started lingering at meetings with friends and business partners, which was unlike his usual punctuality and responsibility for their joint leisure time. The woman tried to explain these oddities with the time difference during their wintering and her husband's fluctuating mood. Maybe even laziness, after all, who wants to toil when surrounded by the sea, sun, and warm breeze? However, such deviations from the norm continued even after they returned home, which made her wonder what might be wrong. These inexplicable changes in her husband's behavior stirred up worry and vulnerability in the woman. Dorothy was used to being in the know about everything happening around her. She began to question the reasons for these changes and tried to understand what was going on in Vidal's life and what could have caused such strange alterations. Only the answers themselves came into her hands. Dora was sorting through the basket of dirty laundry to organize everything by fabric type. In her hands, she came across her husband's jacket, and she checked its pockets, when suddenly she pulled out a completely unfamiliar decorative hairpin, impressively long. At that moment, she ran out of excuses and doubts. It was undeniable evidence that her husband was unfaithful. She could no longer justify his strange actions and behavior because Vidal generally didn't interact with anyone except his colleagues, but it so happened that among them there were only men. There was simply no one to pass this hairpin to him, and Dorothea herself would never have worn something like that. Firstly, the item was clearly made of gold, which Dora couldn't stand. Secondly, such a design of a hairpin was clearly not suitable for Dorothea's age. The head of the ornament was made in the form of a glass ball, inside of which, evidently, a cute heart was laid out with precious stones. Moreover, the letters RG were engraved on the stem of the hairpin. Well, nothing. Women know how to search, she said. The woman decided to take matters into her own hands and began actively checking all her husband's friends on his social networks, comparing their initials with those she saw on the hairpin. But the candidates quickly ran out, leaving only ladies with invented names. And finally, she found a photo of a girl on one of the random pages, posing with exactly the same hairpin that Dorothea held in her hand. It was the definitive proof of his infidelity, which left no room for doubt. Despite Dora already being convinced of her husband's betrayal, it was unbearably painful for her to look into the happy eyes of the girl in the photo. My God, why? What did I do wrong? She whimpered through tears of hurt. After carefully studying the girl's page on social networks, the woman realized that the young girl was not afraid to spend time on family and children at the expense of her career. Many of her posts included quotes from women's forums about happy motherhood, and the girl herself came from a large family. Rosaria Gallego's parents were indecently wealthy. They clearly spoiled their eldest daughter terribly. This person loved a beautiful life and made minimal effort to achieve it. It was a stark contrast to her own values and desires, which further intensified the pain and resentment in the woman's heart. She realized that her husband had met this girl during their winter vacation in Thailand. The very first photo, on which she saw the personalized hairpin, was taken against the backdrop of a luxury hotel where she and her husband stayed before deciding to rent a villa. The anger and resentment that overwhelmed the woman were perfectly natural reactions to the great betrayal and terrible disappointment she felt. Dorothea believed she was the perfect candidate for building a strong family. She invested so much time, energy, and feelings into their relationship with Vidal, hoping for their strength and longevity. And it all fell apart in just one wash. Dorothea felt underestimated, abandoned, and deceived. Instead of appreciating their joint achievements and sacrifices, her husband chose another woman who seemed to better meet his own needs and desires, of which Dora had not even guessed. The suffering woman, engulfed in turmoil, headed to the bar in search of solace or at least temporary oblivion. She simply craved to drown her sorrows and numb the pain. Along the way, she encountered a vagabond, a young man who wasn't begging but merely holding a sign that read cheap labor. Any kind of work, he monotoned: plumbing, minor appliance repair, construction, chopping wood. We'll accept any amount. Don't pass by, folks, any kind of work. His charismatic eyes caught her attention and stirred an inexplicable feeling in her heart. His gaze was too expressive to ignore. At that moment, a strange idea struck her mind. She felt there was something special about the vagabond, something she could use to her advantage. Suddenly, she realized she didn't need to go to the bar to forget her problems. She needed to do something to improve her dire situation. With this unconventional thought, she returned home, already feeling her future triumph. After her husband fell asleep, the woman couldn't close her eyes. She decided to confront his infidelity and do what every self-respecting woman should. Unlocking her husband's phone, she discovered his conversation with his lover, detailing the date, time, and location of their next rendezvous. This only fueled her determination to execute her cunning plan. The next morning, the woman returned to where she had met the vagabond, hoping he would still be there. And miraculously, he was in his usual spot, as if the days hadn't changed. It was a sign, as if fate had sent him to her. The woman decided to talk to the vagabond to find out more about him. Their conversation was mundane, without any hidden agendas. The young man spoke eloquently, making it odd to see him in the role of a homeless person. He didn't delve into the details of his past. He simply stated that he had never broken the law and wasn't an alcoholic who had squandered all his possessions. I've lived a fairly vibrant and dignified youth, the vagabond spoke with a slightly hoarse voice. Shrugging, he continued, it's just circumstances. Even you, Signora, could find yourself in my shoes. At some point, fate might just decide you've had enough. No one is immune to the risk of becoming surplus to our capitalist society. Really? Dorothea raised an eyebrow in mild astonishment and skepticism, examining the man from head to toe. Don't take offense, but perhaps you simply lack the education to safeguard yourself from destitution? Signora, I've seen the advertisements. Hundreds of brochures and videos on big screens, every day, every night. You're in the business of selling valuable wood. The man began gesturing carefully to help his listener grasp the essence of his monologue. Today's sales are good. You have many orders, you manage to pay customs duties, you have many business partners, suppliers, and so on. But then, let's say, a natural disaster strikes, and the wood you need simply isn't there. It's washed away, consumed by forest fires, swallowed by the earth, blown away by a hurricane. The insurance company finds a loophole to leave you stranded. Customers demand refunds. Import of relatively cheap types of wood like cherry or beech isn't profitable. You need to rent new plots for logging. Money isn't endless. Or perhaps you fall ill, God forbid, end up in the hospital, and your deputy steals your business. Do you think there aren't situations that could put you in my shoes? Dorothy crossed her arms over her chest and tilted her head to the side. Though it was evident that the man didn't quite grasp the market structure well, for a simple homeless man, his thoughts were sensible and logical. Further dialogue didn't need ironclad verification. T already knew that she was dealing with just an unlucky man, not some sort of outcast. All right, Luis. I see you're quite an interesting person. I have an offer for you. The woman proposed to the vagrant to pretend to be her lover for a hefty sum they had agreed upon. The man was puzzled and asked many questions, doubting the seriousness of the offer. However, he was drawn to the promised amount, which could provide him with several months of life in a rented room, new albeit cheap clothes, and a chance to return to a normal life. The vagabond, though skeptical of the situation, decided to accept the offer because he needed the money to survive. He understood it was risky and strange, but he didn't have a plethora of options up his sleeve. Thus, they struck a deal and planned their next meeting, the outcome of which could significantly affect their lives. On the appointed day, the woman met the vagrant outside her house. She treated him to a visit to the spa, a beauty salon, and a stylist. After all the procedures, the vagrant emerged as a rather attractive man with captivating green eyes. Dorothy couldn't even imagine that sometimes a pricey suit and a neat haircut could be enough to change the first impression of a person. Now, recalling their interesting conversations, Luis's appearance fully matched his intellect. Now the plan should work, Dora approved, surveying the man from head to toe. Dorothy, you have no idea how long it's been since I wore a good suit. I almost forgot how pleasant and comfortable it is. They headed to a restaurant where the woman had reserved a table in the same hall as her husband, who was supposed to meet his young and wealthy mistress. The vagrant was ready to play his role, and his refreshed appearance attracted admiring glances from passing women. The woman felt strange but determined at the same time. She was ready to do anything to finally deal with her husband's infidelity. She just wanted to show that she too deserved attention not only from her handyman husband, but also from other attractive men. The pseudo-couple gathered in the restaurant awaiting the moment when Dorothy's husband would arrive for his date with his mistress, encountered a slightly disconcerting situation. By the time they arrived at their designated table, no one else was there yet. This made the vindictive woman slightly disappointed as her plans had veered off course a bit. Nevertheless, they decided to use the waiting time to chat. Especially since it turned out that they both enjoyed sharing different thoughts with each other. The pseudo-couple began discussing casual topics, trying to make the situation less tense. They exchanged stories about their lives, dreams, and aspirations, as if they were old acquaintances. During the conversation, the woman began to realize that instead of seeking revenge on her husband, she suddenly found solace in candid conversation with a wanderer. Dorothea and Luis shared their stories and life situations with each other. Once, the man was well known in his circles. But, as he had mentioned before, fate decided he had enough of worldly goods and took everything away from him. I used to be a professional boxer. A champion. fought in the highest league, surrounded by the rays of glory, money, and respect. But sometimes, the price of such victories is very high. In my youth, I was very sharp and impulsive. I wanted to win, win, and only win. That was my solace, my adrenaline rush. Victory in the ring and taking the title meant more to me than any money, the man said, flexing the fingers of his left hand that had been injured, pausing for a moment with apparent regret, gazing into the distance, then continuing his story. 3 men came to my locker room. Rough characters, never expect kindness from such. They slapped a suitcase on the bench, opened it, and it was full of money. In return, they asked me to go down in the second round. I was already angry, but they quickly sat me back on the bench and threatened me with a gun not to protest too loudly. They threatened you with violence? Dorothea sighed in surprise. Yes, but nobody intended to shoot. I only realized that years later. Dealing with a dead champion is harder than with a living one, Lewis bitterly chuckled and took a sip of cold whiskey. They said to choose either the money and lose the title or problems. As you see, I chose the problems. I won then, knocked out the opponent literally in seconds, so angry I was at those bookmakers. After that, they started setting me up everywhere. Short circuit and subsequent fire in the garage, Molotov cocktail thrown into the window of my new apartment while I was at training. They carefully drained all my money from me. Everything, to the last penny. I had to get into debt. There was nothing left to sell. Those bastards burned everything that belonged to me, and what they couldn't burn, they still found a way to defile. The police turned a blind eye. The final straw was when I was robbed on my way home from work. You know, by education, I'm just a simple surveyor, had to take side jobs to repay the bank. But then the thief took all my documents. On the day they came to evict me from the rented apartment, they showed up. Literally an hour before the bailiffs arrived. Mocked me, laughed. Little Lewis, all you had to do was lie down when asked. And now you've fallen to the bottom, and you won't get up until the referee finishes the count. The police chased me out the back. I never saw those people again. I worked unofficially, so once the employer found out about my situation, he decided not to bother and just pointed me to the door. No diploma. No documents. No home. Now all I have is myself and that sign begging to hire me for a pitiful couple of bucks. So the amount you offered me really could change my whole life. I'm already grateful to you for, roughly speaking, washing and dressing me, Taya. The woman saw before her a man who had lost everything, money, fame, and status. He ended up on the streets, facing poverty and despair. But he didn't lose hope and gradually tried to return to a normal life, though it was extremely difficult. This story made Dora reflect on her own problems and aspirations. She realized that, although her situation was difficult, she still had the opportunity to change her life and find new happiness. Lewis remained positive, despite spending several years wandering the streets. Forgotten by everyone, the victor. And yet, such a fate could truly await anyone. In conversation, Luis revealed himself as a person with an easy and straightforward character. He spoke just as he was. There's nothing complicated about me, I'm like an open book. He displayed rare qualities for the modern world, such as modesty and honesty, which immediately earned the respect of the woman. This sturdy man didn't hesitate to show his weaknesses. He never complained about life, but he also didn't deceive it, and most importantly, he didn't deceive himself, calling his life normal. The businesswoman was greatly impressed by the admiration she evoked in the former boxer. He didn't hide his respect and awe for her intellect, achievements, and inner strength. In his eyes, she was a strong and confident woman capable of much, and this inspired her even more. Dorothea, I would never have guessed we're the same age. You look so fresh, Luis teased. You're just enchanting. Believe me, I've seen many status-conscious ladies, and few of them devote time to their bodies rather than the quantity of branded clothes on them. How could you even get upset about some wrinkle that can't see beyond its giant nose? The man froze. He awkwardly smiled, looking into the woman's eyes, But she, holding a stern expression for no more than a couple of seconds, suddenly burst into laughter. I never noticed his nose. It's been in front of my eyes my whole life, and I never saw that instead of nostrils, he has cannelloni. He's really extensive, I'd say. I don't like to judge by appearance, honestly. It's just that it looked weird in those photos where he's standing at 3/4. The man chuckled awkwardly, like a boy who said too much in front of the teacher. I meant to say that Vidal was never perfect in everything. Not perfect looks, not perfect aspirations, a completely foolish set of priorities. Thea, you elevated him to an absolute, but that was your biggest mistake. You're beautiful when you let yourself be. Look at us, sitting in an expensive restaurant, and you're giggling like a little girl, forgetting about perfect etiquette. And it's just magical. These words suddenly gave Dora a second wind. She realized she didn't need to be disheartened by her husband's infidelity, she should pay attention to herself. Now she was sitting at a table with an incredibly wise person. Just a couple of days ago, she considered Vidal such a person, but that was indeed a mistake. Luis wasn't a perfect being, he was a simple man. This man went through a normal childhood without any traumatic memories, through a time of great achievements and glory, through a period of downfall. Now, it seemed he was at the bottom of life, but he wasn't morally broken. So why should Dorothea kill herself over a divorce? Each of them started a business even before the official wedding. Apartments? Who cares about them, or cars? Thea could afford new real estate. But the one thing she couldn't afford was sweet revenge. The fake date was not just a way to satisfy her vindictiveness, but also a display of her own moral superiority. She didn't want to stoop to her husband and his mistress's level, she wanted to show her strength and independence, using the noblest means possible. Louis, you know what, let's scrap the plan of presenting you as my lover, the woman said with a soft smile, bringing the wine glass to her lips. I have a better idea. Just play along with me as best you can. As the queen commands, the boxer joked, raising his hands playfully and chuckling. Tonight is yours, lead it in whichever direction you desire. Though we've only known each other for 2 days, I promise I'll assist you. Simply because a magnificent woman like yourself shouldn't settle for scraps hopping from one stranger's bed to another. The boxer's words inspired her. Indeed, they had only known each other for 2 days, but Dora already knew this man was trustworthy and even necessary. The woman found herself in a completely new state of mind. For the first time in her life, she felt like just a woman, not a genderless achiever machine, but a beautiful, intelligent, and interesting woman with her own multifaceted personality. This new feeling was refreshing and liberating. Instead of conforming to expectations and standards, she felt free to be herself. She realized that her value wasn't solely in her professional accomplishments or her relationship with her husband, but also in her own individuality, her intellect, beauty, and inner strength. All these new feelings, fueled by the wine in her glass, were tearing her apart from the inside. Luis, I need to step away, she said. All right, I won't go anywhere, he assured her. In the restroom, staring into the mirror, the woman could barely hold back her tears. In that moment, she felt as if she were seeing herself for the first time. In the reflection was a young and beautiful woman with an excellent sense of style. Behind her stood years of business experience, 2 higher educations, and fundamental work on the entire history of her success. This moment, yes, in the restaurant's restroom, yes, in front of a simple mirror, but this moment was especially important for her. For the first time, she truly saw herself as she really was, strong, intelligent, beautiful, and worthy of respect. She understood that her value as a woman wasn't limited to external signs or professional achievements, but also lay in her inner world, her morality, strength, and wisdom. And none of this contained the word ideal. All these years, she had pretended to be someone else, when her true nature wanted to laugh, be noisy, relax, and communicate with people not just for work. The woman pondered, did she constantly have to prove to her partner that she was truly magnificent? It was an important question. The initial idea of revenge turned into a desire to shame her husband, to express to him everything she thought about their marriage. And when she exited the restroom, such an opportunity presented itself. Vidal and Rosalia had already taken their seats. Dorothea looked at her husband with completely different eyes. She realized that there was no need to resort to rude words or insults to express her feelings. Instead, she decided to be sincere and open, to do without resentment and anger. It was her first step towards true liberation from pain and offense, and towards a new stage in her life. Dora? Vidal jumped up from his chair at the sight of his wife in a gorgeous evening dress made of flowing beige fabric. Darling, you know. Yes, Vidal, I know. She walked past her husband, straight to the table where Luis was waiting for her. I'm not interested anymore. I've decided that I also have the right to meet someone new, since you've decided to have someone yourself. Vidal looked at Luis, who maintained a casual expression. He behaved as if nothing was happening, while everyone around saw how embarrassed his clumsy spouse was. And what am I supposed to do with this information? He suddenly smirked sarcastically. Got yourself a toy boy, congratulations. So, I assume we have an open relationship now, don't we? We live together but sleep separately? No, I just thought I filed for divorce, but apparently I didn't press the right button. Dorothea innocently raised her eyebrows. You're a grown man, you should understand that in our country a man can have only one wife. You're not a sultan, right? So, I decided to make room for the one you consider more worthy, not to embarrass you. Rosalia is younger and slimmer than me. And her parents are much richer than mine. And, it seems to me, even richer than yours. And Luis decided to accompany me today. Vivi told me about your marriage. Dora, I know there should be some kind of female solidarity, but you're just a terrible wife, Rosalia intervened, immediately starting to cut through the ears of those around her with her fake high-pitched voice. Your husband has been coming home or going to a friend's for years. No love, no tenderness. Just work, work, work. And your genetics. Let's just say, with such a gene pool, no successful child will be born. And it's good that no one was born. No normal family, no children. You just had to admit that you're barren, you can't, that's all. Apparently, your alcoholic father embellished your health, or your mother killed you with diets, so you haven't given birth in all these years. Empty shell, suddenly flared up Vidal. At least Rosalia understands how important it is for a man to leave an heir behind. And you? You're insensitive, callous, rude woman with not a single thought about anything other than work. You were as stupid as me back then, and you've remained so, only now you refuse to admit it since school. Luis, who had maintained stone silence throughout the fervent dialogue, suddenly pounded his fists on the table. The trio fell silent, turning to him. Vidal watched with genuine horror as a burly man slowly rose from behind the table. But it wasn't just the difference in size that frightened the businessman, it was the penetrating green eyes that seemed to pierce into his very soul. Luis approached the brute, not making a single sound, and lifted the adversary by the lapels of his expensive tweed jacket. He began to speak in a steady, calm tone, which made Vidal appear even more menacing. I reckon you come from an educated family. So listen to me, a simple boxer surveyor from a humble background of a history teacher and a pharmacist. I'm not a man of high culture, so I'll explain it to you in my own way. Luis lifted the man frozen in place a little higher, so now he barely touched the ground with the tips of his leather shoes. Dorothea is beautiful. Her family was as cruel as yours, but she still turned out beautiful, unlike you. She wants to be bright, loud, and active, but you've crushed her with constant races for success. You made her believe she was inferior and wrong. You didn't see her perfection in her natural state. You humiliated her, and even now, as an adult, wanting to part ways without unnecessary mudslinging, you're humiliating her. I don't like it. Clear? Suddenly, someone gently tapped the boxer's shoulder. He turned and saw the waiter, who, showing complete indifference to what was happening, asked the men to disperse and not to make a scene. Dorothea chuckled at the absurdity of the situation, and Louis, not one to engage in unnecessary conflicts, slowly put Vidal back on the ground. "I'll stick to my decision," the almost ex-husband mumbled, somewhat offended. "See you in court, Dora." "Goodbye, Vidal." Dorothea bid him farewell airily, effortlessly releasing their marriage into the past. The couple walked away to simply stroll through the night city, and during the conversation, the woman asked her new acquaintance to attend her divorce. It was important for her to have support and protection in this difficult moment, so that the almost ex-husband wouldn't dare to open his mouth in his presence and wouldn't dare to taunt her in her new stage of life. A couple of weeks later, when the divorce was finalized, the woman felt that she had finally freed herself from the chains of an unsuccessful marriage. This step helped her close an old chapter and open a new page in her life. Now she could move forward with a sense of relief and freedom, ready for new opportunities and challenges that might await her. Thanks to her connections and efforts, she helped the boxer rehabilitate himself in the top league as a manager and coach of future champions. Now he could share his knowledge and experience with young boxers, helping them reach the heights of their athletic mastery, protecting them from fraudsters and thugs. It was not only a way for him to rehabilitate himself after tough times, but also an opportunity for him to restore his honor and dignity as an athlete. With the support and assistance of the woman, he found a new meaning and direction in his life, bringing him satisfaction and self-assurance. In everyday life, the man proved to be indispensable. Previously, when a woman encountered problems with something in the house, she had to call craftsmen and wait for them to arrive for half a day. This always irritated Taya. However, everything has changed now thanks to the woman's friend, who turned out to be a jack of all trades. She could simply call him, and within minutes he was already on the spot and ready to solve any problem. Whether it was repairing the bathroom, changing a light bulb, or fixing a faucet, he was always ready to help. His experience and skills in various areas of home repair and maintenance were invaluable to the woman, and she felt deep gratitude for his assistance. Strange thoughts began to creep into her mind as she looked at the boxer. In him, she saw the epitome of masculinity and strength, but not just in a physical sense. His confidence, calmness, and honesty created the image of a real man in her eyes. Unlike her ex-husband, the boxer did not bring competition or rivalry into the relationship. He didn't need to constantly reaffirm his strength and influence. He was simply himself, without an excessive thirst for dominance. She didn't want to compete with him, didn't want to fight for influence. In his presence, she felt special, calm, protected, full of respect and understanding. It was comfortable just being next to him, without the need to prove her worth. After another 6 months, the woman finally decided to express her thoughts to the boxer, disregarding the opinions of others. She decided to open up to him and share her feelings. By the time of this candid conversation between them, they had already developed a close relationship based on mutual respect and understanding. The boxer tenderly embraced his girlfriend, understanding her and sharing her feelings. He responded with reciprocity, confirming that it was important for him to be in a relationship where partners could complement each other. They didn't care what others might say, including possible ridicule or criticism due to the income disparity between the man and the woman. They simply wanted the atmosphere of domestic comfort and mutual understanding to reign in their home. They wanted to enjoy the simple joys of being together, mutually supporting and respecting each other, without burdening themselves with constant struggles for power or influence. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed the story, please support the video by liking it and leaving a comment. Thank you very much.